the world record holder on the rails. This is the maglev. It can travel at 340 miles per hour. The Japanese train hovers a few inches above the track as it is propelled forward. The closest yet to a flying train, maglev is only in its testing phase, but its breathtaking speed means that the Japanese are marketing it as the train of the future. Speed is an irresistible draw. We can never go fast enough. But the faster we go, the less time we have to assess the risks we take. Throughout their history, train companies have known that speed is the one sure way to attract passengers. Publicity stunts lured them onto the tracks. On and on the rail companies raced, their eyes on the prize, the rewards that would come to the one that could go fastest.
Faster yet and faster, eating up the miles, Apache still accelerating. A supreme effort, and Coronation has done it. 114 miles an hour, the highest speed yet attained in the Empire.
More speed meant more passengers, more profits, more risk. Speed and danger were fellow travelers. A dilemma vividly illustrated in an incident at the beginning of the last century, and a problem that haunts the railways to this very day. The attempts of two rival rail companies to compete against each other and satisfy their passengers ended in tragedy. The Great Western and the London and South Western Railways both operated a service from Plymouth to London. The two companies' routes actually met at Exeter Station. They both carried passengers off the transatlantic steamers arriving from New York. But Great Western controlled the signals at Exeter, and it was a known fact that their signalmen sometimes held up their competitors' trains deliberately. As the steamers approached the English Channel, a lighthouse off the Cornish coast would telegraph ahead to warn the railway that a boat was on its way. Down at the terminal, fires were lit in the waiting rooms, and everyone stood by to wait for the arrival of the passengers. Most passengers were wealthy New Yorkers, newly arrived in Britain. The boat train was known as the Yank Express and guaranteed to transport them to London as quickly as possible. There wasn't a published timetable for the train, but a speed table, which simply stated that it would take 4 hours and 20 minutes to travel the 218 miles to London. The London and South Western boat train left Devonport at about 11 o'clock on the night of Saturday the 30th of June, 1906. It was an express service. On the footplate were driver Robbins and fireman Gadd from Nine Elms Depot in London. They were due to arrive at about 3:20 on the Sunday morning. Meanwhile, the rival Great Western service had also set off on its own route, but the London and South Western was still ahead, approaching Salisbury station.
It had lost a little bit of time from Temple Combe and had been running about 4 minutes late, but it was running at possibly about 70 miles an hour, making up time. About a mile west of the station, the driver sounded the whistle and then continued to run at full speed towards the station. He hurtled through the station at probably 60, 70 miles an hour until the train reached the curve at the east end of the station.
The Yank Express had left the track completely, smashing headlong into a nearby milk train, slicing it in half. The sound of the crash woke the whole town. When day broke, the true extent of the damage could be seen. Driver Robbins, fireman Gadd, and 23 out of the 43 passengers on board, plus the guard of the milk train, had all been killed in the smash. The derailment at Salisbury shocked the nation. Crowds gathered at the site of the accident, and the Queen sent a message of condolence to the American ambassador. As an investigation began, experts agreed that Salisbury Station was notoriously hard for drivers to navigate. At the east end of the station, there was a sharp curve which had a speed limit of 30 miles an hour, but the boat train had been doing at least 70. As soon as news of the derailment spread, speculation began about the reason for this high speed. Much was made of the competition between the London and South Western and Great Western Railways. Their rivalry was well known.
There were various rumours going around that the train had been racing. About the time that the accident happened, the Great Western were actually going to open a shorter route to London. So there was a suggestion that maybe driver Robbins was trying in a piece of rivalry to beat the Great Western.
Surviving passengers told the investigation they'd been frightened by the speed. It was going so fast, they said, they couldn't keep their plates on the dining car tables. The investigation simply concluded that the smash was due to excessive speed on a curve. The incident became a national talking point. It also made a serious impression in the minds of rail passengers. But that wasn't quite the end of the story. After the investigation closed, another accusation was made. As well as blaming competing rail companies, it appeared that some of the passengers themselves had bribed the driver to get them to London in record time. Since the wreck of the Yank Express, all trains have been made to stop at Salisbury Station. In addition, the speed limit on the deadly curve at the eastern end of the station was reduced to 15 miles an hour, a limit still in force today. Nearly 100 years later, it is surprising how few lessons we seem to have learnt from the past. At Southall in 1998, a high-speed passenger train owned by Great Western Trains, the modern descendant of one of the two rival boat trains, went through a red signal at around 90 miles per hour. It ploughed into a freight train crossing the track in front of it. 7 people died and 150 were seriously injured. Evidence suggested that the pressure not to delay the train could have been one of the factors that led the driver on the route from Swansea to London to take the train out, even though its automatic brake warning system was broken. This was a major cause of the accident. During the court case, the judge summed up by saying, "Those who travel on high-speed trains are entitled to expect the highest standard of care from those who run them, and Great Western Trains failed to meet that standard." As the causes of tragedies at Southall and Salisbury reveal, it isn't just the pure speed of a train which can contribute to disaster. It's getting there on time that can take speeding trains out of control. It's what the passenger wants, but the pressures of the timetable can have dangerous consequences. Railways were the first form of transport to lay down in writing the claims they were making for exact journey times with speed, and punctuality. They were called railway timetables. They had a fundamental effect on the whole of society.
Yes, we'd love to come and see you. Shall we come by that midday train on Saturday?
Well, I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll catch the 3:15. Be with you at 4 o'clock. All right.
Before the railways, there was no standard time. All time was local time, and everywhere was different. In the 1840s, clocks in the West Country were set 20 minutes behind the clocks in London. But with published timetables to run to, the railways had to make sure that all the station clocks, at least, were set to the same time. Passengers began to set their watches to run in time with the railways. It led to one standard time being adopted in 1847. In the USA, it was called railroad time.
Right on the dot. 4.5 hours for this trip is certainly traveling. I can remember when it took 7 hours. 7 if you were lucky.
But by associating itself with tight timekeeping, the railway was making a rod for its own back. Passengers expected, and today demand, that trains keep to their timetables more strongly than with any other form of transport.
I'll tell you your job. I can't get to mine through you.
This insatiable demand to get there on time has forced trains to push speed to its limit. But making them go faster is only one half of the problem. Arriving in one piece means slowing down and stopping at your destination. And the better the technology to speed trains up, the more critical it is to slow them down. It takes a train traveling at 125 miles an hour, 1¼ miles to come to a complete standstill once the brakes are applied. A train braking system has to be able to resist forces of several thousand tons. The same scientific principle which overcomes friction to allow steel wheels on steel tracks to propel huge loads at high speeds also makes it hard to bring them to a halt.